Hi, I'm Howard, a software engineer working on building a daily trivia app for fun, essentially. So, in this series, I'd like to talk about everything that goes into building this project, from designing and planning to how I go about programming it, and then ultimately deploying the web application as well. The main goal of the project is to create an app that gives people a little taste of a variety of topics, such as history, geography, science, arts, and literature. So, questions like the one that I've got up at the moment, which is like, who is the artist that's painted this famous painting, and it's got the Starry Night. And hopefully, as you know, the answer is, of course, Vincent van Gogh. And if you select an answer, even if you selected the wrong answer, in fact, it'll give you a little blurb which kind of just adds a bit of context to the question, a little bit of additional information that might intrigue people. So, when I was a kid, I was really interested in encyclopedias. I think the book that I've probably spent more time reading than any other is the DK Children's Encyclopedia. I think I've spent more time reading that than anything else. And even these days, I quite like books like the Intellectual Devotional, which contains a whole range of topics with like a page or a couple of paragraphs about each one. So topics from the potato famine all the way to what the contents of blood are. So all sorts of topics from sort of history to science. And I'd like a daily quiz that covers similar topics. Essentially topics that everyone should have some knowledge of. So a good starting point for any software project is a mock-up of the UI, which I've created in this illustration software. So you can see the landing page here, which is simply just explaining what the application is, and a button to play today's quiz. At some point I'll probably also add a button to play previous days' quizzes, things like that. So when the player presses that button, essentially a call to the backend is made that retrieves today's quiz. And then, so the first question in the quiz is displayed to the user, and the user can then select whatever they believe the answer is and click next when that shows, which will then take them to the sort of results for that particular question to see if they got it right or wrong. And then after they've answered all of the questions, it'll go to the results screen, which tells them how many questions they got right out of all 6, and how they compared to everybody else who has played this particular quiz, including a breakdown by question. So they'll be able to see that they got question 1 correct, but so does 75% of people. And my plan is to, as well as having just these fairly simple multiple choice questions, I'd quite like questions where you basically have to put things in order. So you could, a question, for example, would be to put these historical events in order by selecting like the Battle of Hastings first, and then possibly the Magna Carta, whichever way around these are. I can't remember off the top of my head. Magna Carta, Wars of the Roses, and then English Reformation, which might, just like a slightly different question type to sort of keep it interesting. And I think I'd also like, as I showed at the beginning, occasional sort of picture-based quizzes, still ultimately multiple choice, but you can sort of introduce a picture. So here I've created an extremely high-level view of the architecture of the Daily Trivia app. So my intention is basically to create the front end as an Angular application, so a simple web app basically. So anybody can just go to this web page and play the game if they want to. And this Angular app makes requests to the backend, which will just be a Kotlin Ktor application that basically receives these HTTP requests and then returns some JSON information that the front end can handle. And everything is stored in a Postgres database, which is just a pretty standard relational database that loads of companies use and loads of people use. If you're interested in giving the quiz a go, it is actually online already, and if you go to dailytrivia.minibuilds.io, you can play the quiz in a somewhat partially finished state. So at the moment, you can go ahead and answer all of the questions. It will give you the same questions every day, although maybe that'll be different by the time you play it, and it won't have a fully fleshed out results screen. It will just tell you that you got like 5 out of 6 or something like that. But feel free to play it and give me any feedback if you sort of think of any ways to make it more entertaining and everything. So there should be plenty of interesting topics to talk about while working on this project. For example, we're going to talk about containerization, or containerizing the application, which is like packaging it up to run in, for example, Kubernetes or Docker Compose. We'll talk about deploying it to some sort of VM running in the cloud. We'll talk about like planning and creating user stories. We'll probably talk a little bit about Jira and Agile. We'll talk a little bit about CI, CD, or continuous integration, continuous deployment with GitHub Actions. I'd like to talk a little bit about monitoring and observability, which is basically being able to view how your application is running by using like dashboards and alerts. For example, dashboards showing the number of requests per second that your application is handling, as well as just sort of fairly standard things like programming in Kotlin and TypeScript. So it should be really fun. Thanks for watching.